It is June 26, 2025, and while the current ceasefire between Iran and Israel and the US appears to be holding for now, this war is far from over. And many in Iran know the reality that the US and Israel will not stop targeting their country. It will not stop pushing to overthrow their government. And it has proven that time and time again, even as we have Trump saying that the US and Iran are gearing up for nuclear talks coming up next week. So, what does this mean for the people of Iran? And what was it like going through this war over the last 2 weeks, having their country targeted and attacked? Well, I discussed all of that with a special guest who joined us from Iran earlier. So let's take a listen to that conversation now. Joining me now to discuss is Dr. Setareh Sadeqi, an assistant professor at the University of Tehran. Setareh, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
Thank you, Rachel, for having me.
Now, I want to get your take on the latest here. I know that we are now on the second day of, I guess you could say it's a ceasefire in the sense that Iran has said that it would bring an end to its retaliatory attacks against Israel and the US as long as they did not launch further attacks. And I'm curious to know, what is the atmosphere like there in Iran? I mean, if you just look at the internet, there seems to be kind of a mixture of celebration, the attacks are over, right? There's victory on Iran's part, but also kind of frustration with the fact that Iran did agree to this ceasefire when it did. Is that an accurate portrayal of what it's actually like there on the ground?
Yeah, I would say for the most part, people have been celebrating on the streets and on social media. You see videos going viral of different celebrations, people congratulating each other, but it's at the same time they're observing with suspicions and they're not totally sure because as we know the Zionist regime has proven over and over that it never respects ceasefire and it's just looking for any opportunity to attack other countries, be it Iran or Lebanon or Palestine. So um, I saw these tweets on Twitter and also posts on Instagram that people asked AI how many times has Israel violated ceasefires, and it surpasses 1,000 times. And that tells you where people in Iran also stand. They know that Israel is preparing for something, but what that is, we're not sure. And so I think at the same time that people are happy that the everyday bombings and drone attacks have stopped, even though the Iranian defense system intercepted a lot of them and protected the majority of the nation against those attacks. More than 600 people have died, civilians in the attacks, and thousands have been injured. Houses have been demolished. That's what Israel is very good at. It's just targeting civilians and innocent people while they're sleeping in their homes or hospitals or incubators. That's what they specialize in, and they cannot really. Um, I think they have realized that they cannot defeat Iran in a parallel war if they actually attack. If they use their military capabilities against Iran, they're not going to be very successful. So that's what they usually do. And that's why they beg for the US to come in and help them. But on the streets, except I would say maybe for a couple of days when the war started, everything, I mean, I'm talking about Isfahan, where I come from and I live, and other cities. Tehran was very different because the majority of attacks were carried out in Tehran. But in Isfahan and in the majority of other cities, normal life actually never stopped. People were on the streets. I remember even on June 14, which is a day after the war started, I went to a restaurant with my family and people were on the streets. The restaurant was full of people and maybe a fewer people as you would expect. But it was functioning and normal life. And as we were sitting in the restaurant, we could hear, the exchange of fire. But the atmosphere on the streets was mostly relaxed. And now this is even back that's like totally back to normal, and people are on the streets and living their life. But you can also see online and people talking about what is Israel cooking, right? Like what's going to happen next, because Israel has never respected ceasefire. And I actually saw this poster that was warning that now the war has moved to a gray zone where it's not a war, but it's not peace either. We cannot really call it peace because Israel has always threatened Iran, has always, even before this war, assassinated Iranian nuclear scientists, has always trained and funded terrorist groups to carry out terrorist attacks inside Iran. We know how Israel hosted and funded ISIS terrorists. Israeli hospitals welcomed ISIS terrorists back during the war on Syria. Israel, the Mossad and CIA worked together during Bush administration to train MEK, the notorious terrorist group, which some people like to call it Iranian opposition group, but it's just a terrorist group, to carry out assassinations of Iranian nuclear scientists. And that's well before the US delist this terrorist organization from the list of their, terrorist entities so they also considered this terrorist group a terrorist group, what they actually are about. But once they thought that they can use them, they can exploit them against Iran. A few years ago, they delisted it. Europe and the US delisted MEK to facilitate and make the funding and the arming of them easier. And that's what they've been focused on, trying to create instability and chaos inside Iran. But as you can see, the Iranian nation still stands. We're almost 90 million people. Size-wise, we're 75 times more than the occupied lands that the Zionist entity claims to own. And we're indigenous to the land we're living. We're not living on stolen lands and stolen houses. So we feel very confident in defending what we have.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you bring that up, and I really appreciate that explanation because it was so interesting to see here in the Western media, initially going into this war after Iran was attacked, you had all of these reports of, oh, the Iranian government is going to fall, right? The Iranian people are not in support of it. And I'm looking at this and going, okay, everyone I'm talking to within this country, which, yes, just a few people, but they're talking about the unity that they're seeing, right? The country coming together. And even right now, as you're noting, while on one hand, you can look at this and say, okay, we have a ceasefire. On the other hand, there's also this realization that Israel and the US are not done with their attacks. They're not done pushing for the Iranian government to be overthrown and so on and so forth, all of these ways in which they're trying to sow and push for destruction in the country. And I did think it was interesting as we heard from Iranian leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei earlier, and he declared victory in the war imposed by the US and Israel and noted that any future attacks on Iran would come with a great cost. Now, as he noted there, Iran has made it clear that it can target U.S. military bases in the region, including its largest Middle East base in Qatar, and that it will retaliate if it is attacked. How do you view his statements? I mean, it seems like right now Iran is saying, hey, here's all of the ways we can target you. We're hoping that deterrence is enough to keep the US and Israel from doing something like this again, but they're also very wary of what is being cooked up behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the statement by Ayatollah Khamenei, but also What you can see here on social media, on TV, among people, and what they're talking about is that yes, we showed a decisive response. We showed the U.S. And the Israeli regime that if we want to target you, we can do it. I think the fact that Israel kind of begged for a ceasefire shows that they know if without, especially if the U.S. does not get more involved than it usually does, because we cannot claim that the U.S. was not involved. The U.S. has always been involved in Israel war, including the war that the entity staged on Iran. Without the U.S. help, Israel would not even exist. Let's put it that way. And all the aggression on Palestinians, on Lebanese, and on Iranians have always been with the support, funding, and arming of the U.S. I mean, it's U.S. taxpayers that are paying for the so-called Iron Dome, for Israel's defense system, for everything that the Israeli regime is doing. It's the Americans who are paying for it, not Israelis. And so without that, Israel would not be capable of doing any of the things, any of the crimes that it's committing. But I think Iran showed that if Iran actually wanted to totally destroy the occupied lands, it was able to do that. It was capable of carrying that out. And if it wasn't for the U.S. that came to help Israel, even the destruction that we are seeing, the images that are coming from Haifa and Tel Aviv, which are nothing, like absolutely nothing compared to what Israel has done to Palestine and Lebanon and Iran. I mean, Iran, that's a different case, but especially Palestine. Iran, I think, proved that they're capable of doing more than what they have done to repel the Israeli threat that has always existed against Iranian nation ever since we had a popular revolution in 1979. The popular revolution of the 1979 is very important in the context of what we're seeing today, because Iran was run by a monarchy put in power by the U.S. regime. We know the 1953 coup against the democratically elected government of Mossadegh, carried out by the U.S. And they lost. I mean, that revolution, the popular revolution of 1979, cut the hands of U.S. from Iran's from the country, from Iran's oil. And that definitely upset the U.S. and Israel, which was a staunch ally of the U.S. And people remember that the Israeli hostilities against Iranians started well before even the revolution. For example, Mossad worked with the notorious Savak, which is the Shah's intelligence service, to torture Iranian dissidents. And they imprisoned and tortured Iranian oppositions inside the country. And people have not forgotten that. And after the revolution, yeah, I know that Israel always talks about Iran being a threat, but it's actually that Israel has always targeted Iran. Israel has armed terrorist groups against Iran. Israel has assassinated Iranian scientists, assassinated Iranian generals, armed terrorist groups against Iran. The U.S. Also worked with Saddam's regime to target Iran, and they tried to steal Iranian land, which was unsuccessful. Again, people remember these things, and they know that the animosity of the Israeli regime will never stop. If you live on stolen land, on a colonial project, then you will always feel that other people are threatening you, because you know that what you're living on is other people's property, right? I'm talking about Palestinians' land that has been taken by Israelis. So obviously they're paranoid. They think that everyone wants to attack them, but they are the ones who destroyed all these cities and established their settlements on those stolen lands. And they're living in a glass a house made of glass, and so you shouldn't throw stones, right? You are the existential threat to your regime. It's your genocidal campaign that poses an existential threat to you. It's not Iran or Palestine. Yes, Iran is capable of deterring you and deterring your hostilities, and that might bring about the end of your regime because your regime lives on genocide and killing and massacre. But it is you who are, and it's the Israeli regime that is carrying out the genocide and this massacres and terrorism, and that's what threatens the existence of that regime in the region because everyone is, I mean, especially over the past 2 years, I think the world has witnessed and that the Israeli regime sees no limit, no principles in killing children and women and just civilians and targeting hospitals, destroying house. Even the Israeli minister of genocide, I will call him, Katz, said that the people of Tehran should pay a price. They should be punished, and he's talking about punishing or probably ethnic cleansing 14 million people. Tehran alone is almost double the population of the settlers in the occupied Palestine. And you know how Ted Cruz was interviewed and he had no idea about how many people live in the US. I think that's the problem with a lot of US politicians and probably some people in Israel. They underestimate the unity that exists in Iran. They underestimate the support that the current establishment, the Islamic Republic and the Islamic Revolution enjoy inside Iran. They think if people have grievances against our government, it means that they want an end to the entire establishment. But the fact is, people see that when Israel attacks, it is this government, it is the Islamic Republic that defends them and protects their lives. It is the Islamic Republic and IRGC who is capable of repelling the Israeli threat and protecting the lives of its citizens. So that makes them unify and rally behind the flag and want to protect their country. And that's what's often overlooked. Like a lot of people in the West, I would say, especially politicians, have miscalculated what Iran is about. A nation of 90 million people with being the 17th biggest country in the world with thousands of years of civilization is not going to be brought to its knees by an entity that has lived on occupation and stealing of land for maybe 70 something years. That's not going to happen. And this just shows that Israelis are totally wrong about what Iran and the Iranian nation, the Iranian revolution is about.
Yeah, and it's so interesting as you're raising it there, it's making me think of just how much Israel and the US use projection, right? As you were noting there, comparing the land, right? An Iranian is going to say, well, this is my land. What am I to be concerned about? Whereas someone in Israel is going to be like, well, we've been here for a few decades and we're very concerned. At the same time, you also have this ongoing psychological warfare. And it's been interesting to watch all of the ways in which the US and Israel have tried to implement that in Iran, have tried to, they've focused on these attacks happening within the country with a string of assassinations. It was part of their named Operation Rising Lion. I don't know where they came up with the name, but they did. And you have this string of assassinations. You also have this targeting of Iranian air defense. And this is all to get in the minds of the Iranian people and the government to think you're never safe. We can always target you. How do you think that that is kind of coming into play, and how do you think that the people of Iran view it? Whereas, kind of as you were noting before, there's this even increased sense of unity because Iran was the country that was attacked, right? Iran was the country that was now having to defend itself, and it's well aware of all of this psychological warfare that Israel and the US are actively pursuing against it.
Yeah, as you said, I mean, I think Iranian people have, the majority of the people here have understood very well that it's definitely not about Iran's nuclear program. Israel and the US have been saying that Iran's is, I don't know, like 1 week away or 1 month away from developing a nuclear weapon for 30 years. And they have been saying that Iran is creating disability or chaos in the region. But that's, as you said, this is projection propaganda. That's exactly what Israel is doing. The Israeli regime is the entity that does have nuclear weapons. It has the largest stockpile of nuclear weapons in the region. It is a country that has attacked other countries. It has attacked Palestine, Lebanon, Egypt, different countries in the region, Iran. And Iran has never attacked any other countries. Iran has never, ever started a war in its modern history. And people who live here know that. As you said, many of the settlers, even though they think that they are living on the promised land, or they are the God-chosen people, their supremacy, their racism is not going to help them and come save them uh, when Iran responds. And it's I think it's funny how they're like the vast majority, based on opinion polls, the vast majority of the settlers are consider themselves atheists, but at the same time they believe that God has promised them that land. It shows where that like Jewish supremacy stands, and it's not about a religion or God. It's all about a colonial project, um, and people have seen, as I said, Iranians have seen that the end game has always been a regime change and the balkanization of the country. Uh, I think it's interesting to know that the rising lion that they're talking about comes from the fact that the Iranian flag, the previous Iranian flag during the monarchy, that is now often used by the so-called opposition groups, which are basically anti-Iran elements supported by Israel and the US, use the same flag, and that flag has a lion in it. So Israel wanted to imply that we're bringing that flag back, which is the previous monarchy, which was ousted by the Iranians during the popular uprising of the 1979, the revolution. We put an end to the US-backed monarchy, and we established our own form of democracy, which has been functioning for almost 50 years very successfully. And Iran stands as a very strong nation with advanced technology in science. And interesting to know also, with women making up the majority of its university students, engineers, and scientists. Women are a very active part of the society, an active part of the decision-making system, the academics. We have doctors, pilots, athletes. Women are active in all sectors. And um, so they have people feel that they have achieved, or at least they're moving towards the achievement of the progress that they were wishing for through the revolution. Yes, we're not still there where the full progress and what we actually have dreamed for is totally achieved, but we're moving towards that. We're seeing the progress of the country despite unilateral sanctions imposed on the country, despite imposed wars on the country, despite the support of terrorism and terrorist organizations against our country, the killing of our scientists, and various forms of hostilities, economic terrorism or military terrorism that the U.S. and Israel have practiced against us, we're standing strong. We have not lost an inch of our country. The scientific progress is still going on. The technological advances are going on. Yes, we're still far from what we want to be, but we're working towards that. And people feel that they are part of it. They're not excluded, and it's not for like top less than 1% minority. Everyone can enjoy it. For example, just as an example, the medical system in Iran, which is famous, just like the Cuba's medical system is also famous after they uh, they had a revolution. Uh, it benefits the public. It benefits the people. It's not like, for example, in the U.S. where the medical system has become just for the rich. A lot of people in the US cannot afford basic medical services. It's not like that. Yes, when we're going through sanctions and also sometimes economic mismanagement, there are people who will suffer. But still, the majority are enjoying very easy access to doctors, hospitals, nurses. The different insurance companies that we have facilitate that. And people are seeing that they are a part of the society, and despite grievances that are, I think, common in any democracies, like, for example, just to make it more clear, like how in the US people fight over Democrats or Republicans and which one is better for their country. We actually have kind of a similar system in the sense that we have different political parties that people align with, and these alignments can shift over time. But except with the difference that here we directly vote for our representatives and our president. We do not have an electoral system that can be engineered towards not representing the will of the people. So I know how the anti-Iran propaganda always wants to talk about one Ayatollah or one mullah ruling the country, and there is Sharia law, and Iran is this exotic, strange, oppressed place for the people, but that's not true. And I wish more people would come to visit the country and see it for themselves that this country is not monolithic. We're 90 million people. We come from many different ideas. We have, for example, the city that I come from and I live, Isfahan, has more than 11 active churches. We have a Christian community, a Christian district, and we have a Jewish community. We have synagogues. Um, Actually, a couple of months ago, I visited a synagogue with an American Jewish friend who was visiting, and it's just what I mean. I think by now a lot of people in the world have realized that whatever the U.S. says about a country, they should probably believe in the opposite, because the U.S. will never tell you the truth about the country that has, you know, fought them and has fought imperialism. And that's the common, I think that's the common struggle that the people of the world, especially from the global south, have. We have always wanted to fight back against imperialism and about a domineering world order that does not care about anything but their own money and, how capitalism works. And Iran is a very good example of resisting that despite all sorts of pressure and sanctions and aggression that has come. We're still standing. We have not given up, and we're not going to surrender. We're going to fight this battle as long as we can. And it has been almost 50 years that we've been fighting it with dignity and courage and victory.
Yeah, and I think that you made a great point there. Everything that the US says, you almost have to look at the exact opposite, right? Because they are going to do everything that they can to portray Iran in a negative light, not only because the US is not able to influence or control it, but also because it is a very important pillar of this growing multipolar world. And so the US is always going to see it as a threat and try to target it in a number of ways. And exactly as you noted earlier, it specifically targets the civilians, whether it's these direct attacks that are carried out or whether it's the ongoing sanctions there. And all of that is done on purpose. I know that there is really a lot at stake here all around, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today and also, spreading some light on a few things, helping to educate the public on what life is actually like in Iran. Dr. Setareh Sadeqi, an assistant professor at the University of Tehran, thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you, Rachel, for having me, and thanks for helping spread the truth about the world that we live in, especially about Iran.
If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. That's where you'll find ad-free videos and new weekly episodes of my exclusive series for paid subscribers called Sanction. You can also check out Sanction over on my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Rachel Blevins. As always, thank you all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.